Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you, featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, we're going to be talking to Maudene Nelson, a nutritionist. She's going to talk about a view from the eyes of a nutritionist. She recently retired as the director of the community outreach at the Columbia University Institute of Human Nutrition. In her more than 35 years at the Columbia University Medical Center, Ms. Nelson provided nutrition counseling to patients, has been a diabetes educator at the Naomi Berrie Diabetes Center, and she's co-authored several publications. She's also taught medical, dental, nursing, and public health and graduate nutrition students. I want to welcome to our show Maudene Nelson.
Hi, Susan.
So great that you're on the show, Maudene, because I know that you have a lot of information to share with our audience. And so you continue to work as a volunteer for the American Diabetes Association. What does that do for you? Why do you think that it's necessary to be a volunteer for a group such as Diabetes Association?
Well, I am a strong believer in volunteering for any and everything, not just for sometimes the rewards of getting a discount on a registration or something like that, like at a bike ride. But the American Diabetes Association, to me, is doing great work. They provide advocacy for all people with diabetes. There's so many cases around the country where people have been discriminated against. Children not being able to go on field trips with their schoolmates, adults being denied licenses to drive interstate, and the American Diabetes Association has provided legal assistance with cases to help them get resolution. And so I'm very proud of the association. I'm very happy to be a volunteer. Not only do they advocate, they also legislate. So we've gone to had various committees or volunteers such as myself go to not only federal legislators' offices but also states to say, here is a case that needs to be changed in your state law in order to provide or to eliminate discrimination against people with diabetes. There's a lot of myths about diabetes out there that really need to be, the light needs to be shown on them and they need to be dispelled. And also American Diabetes also has a huge focus on education for little ones, medium, big ones, and that I just know whenever they'll call on me to say we need someone to do a presentation or to be at a health fair or to assist with visiting a legislator, as long as I'm available, I'm happy to do it.
What are the myths that you were referring to?
Well, you can't eat sugar. That's just not true.
Really?
Now, for any human being, there's a certain amount of sweetness that we all enjoy, and it's absolutely ridiculous to think that a person will go with no sweetness ever again the rest of their lives. So that's just setting up an impossible goal. Therefore, if someone has diabetes and someone walks up next to them while they're enjoying a candy bar or a dish of ice cream, if you make that snarky remark, you're not supposed to eat that, are you? You can fully expect my backhand against your head because it's just not true and it's not fair. So if a person has diabetes, it's all about having a sense of the total amount of carbohydrate in your meal or in your snack and how it will affect your blood sugar in the next 5 minutes to 2 hours. And if you got that down to a science, you can enjoy what you like.
But Maudene, let me ask you this. When you eat a fruit, for instance, there's a natural sugar in that. And isn't that a better thing for you to eat rather than a candy bar or ice cream?
Well, here we are. This is the view from from that shoulder of the dietitian. We don't like good food, bad food. And there's better food, worse food. We sort of figure if you know the basic rules that you want to eat lots of fiber, you want to have foods which have minimal amount of processing, as original as they can be, and you're making those kinds of choices from day to day, meal to meal, then if we wanted to really have a chat about the difference between the fructose, the sucrose, the maltose, and the what other sugars might be in a fruit, because no fruit is one sugar. If an apple, a banana, a peach, grapes, they will all have a variety of different sugars in them in comparison to a candy bar, which is also going to have pretty much whatever is the best sugar that will enhance the flavor. You probably can make a case that the fruit has more good stuff in general. It's got vitamin C, it may have beta-carotene, it certainly has fiber, but the sugar content may not really be hugely different. I would definitely say, let's have some fruit. If I'm going to work in the morning, I will put a banana in my bag, and I guarantee you by lunchtime I have baby food wrapped in a yellow peel. So sometimes fruit isn't as portable, and if you do need a little, just for fun, I'm not going to talk about energy boost because I think that's all kind of fuzzy math and fuzzy science too, but if you just feel like something sweet and you do have a little something in your bag that didn't mash up or melt or, run into all your electronics, it's better off being dried fruit with nuts. It's a much better goal if you were able to pack some grapes in a crush-proof container. But I'm certainly not going to come down on you if you pull out a candy bar.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's life.
Yeah, very interesting.
But so we want to know make some good options. Get a little sense of planning ahead. And of course, my husband is fed up with me with all my plastic containers because I'm always ready to carry a little something with me wherever I'm going to go, and often, if I can, share it. But you will find a payday mini candy bar in the bottom of my bag many times.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, you also, some of your nutrition advice includes eating mostly foods that grow from roots and never had a heartbeat.
Yes.
Explain that. That's really neat.
Okay. So it's basically, do you have a plant-based diet? In other words, all the things that you can imagine on your plate, and I might even digress for a quick second, Susan.
Sure.
One of the things that is the trending of our foodways in the U.S. at least is that we have a lot more things that we eat while we're out, and we eat while we're walking around, and we eat them at our desk, in our car, on the bus, subway, and things like that. And so those foods tend to be things that are in bags that are vacuum sealed or in styrofoam or in cardboard or in something else. And I really like to encourage people to remember that maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of your meals should really be on a plate. And the plate means that you have, amongst other things, sat down to a table with a plate in front of you, and hopefully you have some family members or people close to you. Because we foodies are really keen on saying, we're supposed to break bread together. That's such an important social experience. Maybe it's the same. I'm not a millennial, so maybe if you sit in a coffee shop with your way overpriced coffee, by the way, and you're chatting it up, that's good too, because it's still all about, sharing and relationship type things. But so when I say try to eat on a plate, that's a good thing. That means you didn't just eat, but you made time out to eat, and you sat and you paused. I have a former nutrition graduate student who was born in Taiwan, and she gave me some tip that her mother said to her when she was a child. She says, when you eat, you're an emperor. And that means you will not tolerate ugly conversation, distracting noises, anything that will take away from the special meaning of having a meal. So I've borrowed that from her mom a million times. So
very interesting.
And what would that emperor now should eat more plant-based foods. So your foods on your plate hopefully look a lot like things that used to be on a vine or hung from a tree, or maybe they were from a bush, something like that. But it doesn't mean you can never ever eat.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.
Eat anything that's animal-based, like milk or yogurt. Yogurt's fabulous for the microorganisms, for the protein, for the calcium. If no big deal to eat cooked lean meat, poultry, fish, and all that. But most of your food should be something that had a root.
Let's talk a little bit about lactose intolerance. because you just mentioned dairy, and so many people seem to have allergies, and one of the things that they seem to have is lactose intolerance. Do you think that that's real?
I've seen a lot of people who do have lactose intolerance, and depending on what statistics you go to, because we nutritionists are very keen on saying anything that comes out of my mouth needs to be evidence-based, so it's not just my supposition or my strong opinion, and I got plenty of those. So you have to, who's doing the counting and the measuring? It seems as though more human beings on the globe do not tolerate lactose. In other words, they don't make that enzyme in their intestines which is called lactase, which breaks the lactose down. More human beings don't make it than those who do. So we don't call the inability to digest milk sugar an abnormal condition, because it seems to be more the norm. The majority of people have that than don't. And then it may be something that you would experience short term if you've had some kind of a stomach upset. You don't probably want to eat or drink milk too close after having had something that caused you to have a little vomiting or diarrhea, because seems like the ability to produce that lactase is slightly diminished during some kind of trauma to your gizzards, But if a person isn't well suited to drinking milk because of the milk sugar lactose, and they want to, I've found a lot of people that say, well, I'll just eat a bowl of cereal or have ice cream near bedtime, and that way if I get a little gassy, I'm asleep. It's too bad for the person, who might be in the room. And the other thing is that the yogurt being fermented, although it may still contain a modest amount of lactose, it seems it's better tolerated. So I would say if a person's thinking lactose and me or milk and me are not friends, and you want to include it, see if you can. And then, of course, there's the lactose-reduced milk products that are on the market, if that's an option that someone wants to partake of. I think we in our nation have a strong bias that you have to drink milk or else. Like, we grow cows and we make milk, and I'm not picking a fight with milk or cows, but somehow our message to drink milk every day is most likely reflecting the fact that we have an industry that does that. So if you are good with milk, enjoy it. If you're not, there's other options to get your calcium and your protein and the other nutrients that are in milk.
Well, you're mentioning the fact that you may not need milk, but what about vitamin D? How do you get that?
I would say primarily it needs to be through sunlight, because there's another thing that we foodies say is we need to get out in the sun, and not to contradict the American Cancer Society's caution against excess sun exposure, but we need to get at least 20 minutes a day of some good rays on our skin, because under the surface of your skin, as you know, is this substance called 7-dehydrocholesterol, and ultraviolet light converts it into an active form of vitamin D. I mean, it's then processed in our kidneys and in our liver, but it still becomes vitamin D, and it's the most normal way that human beings do it. So get some sunshine, number one. Number two, then milk is a good source of vitamin D, as regular milk, because of the butter fat, has vitamin D in it, and if it's fat-free milk, it's vitamin D fortified. And the other sources of vitamin D include mushrooms.
Mushrooms?
Yeah, cod liver oil. Yeah, let's go get a quart of that. Not.
Yes,
said not. Nobody ever.
What an interesting.
Yeah, mushrooms that have been exposed to ultraviolet light have vitamin D in them as well. And there's you can also get it from egg yolk. And although there's this, the egg industry has lots of information assuring you that eating eggs is not causing a heart attack. So I say take the fear of eggs and leave it at the front door. Put it out with the recycle.
Let's talk about other vitamins and minerals, because we've always been told that vitamin C is very important if you have a cold or less vitamin C than you need, you can get a lot of illness. What do you have to say about vitamins and minerals we need?
So there's always been that default phrase, eat a balanced diet and you'll get all you need. And that may not be the case. And first of all, how do we define a balanced diet? So let me give you my balanced plate, which is that 1/2 of the space on your plate, let's say 1/2, maybe down to 1/3, should be as many colorful vegetables and fruits as you can lay your hands on. And by colorful, I mean purples and greens and oranges and blues and yellows. And then 1/3 of the space on your plate needs to be can be a good rich carbohydrate source like whole grain, brown rice, whole wheat spaghetti. I'm gradually getting used to whole wheat spaghetti. I got to tell you, it wasn't my favorite first time out. Mm-hmm. Still isn't, but there are nations that live on pasta and they're healthy, so we really can't make a sweeping generalization that pasta is bad. I think it's a little bit of a twist on the interpretation of how much total carbohydrate is healthy, and are people sort of skewing their diets too much in favor or too much too far against. But that's my balanced plate. So you have 1/3 to 1/2 colorful fruits and vegetables. So your sweet potato, your carrots, your spinach, your leafy greens, don't forget your bananas and your peaches and your grapes. And yes, these foods are not free in the supermarket. It's not go in and help yourself. And I get sticker shock every time I go in and I want to buy a pound of grapes. And I also is certainly supporting the message to try to eat locally. So there's ways, and it's just make sure that you have lots of those. Then 1/4 of space on your plate can be your protein food, which can be beans or another plant source like tofu, or it can be your chicken or fish or veal or turkey. So now, if you do that, are you still going to get all the vitamins and minerals you need? Mm-hmm. And it kind of depends. There's sort of a short list of people who might need supplementation with some nutrient. Anyone who eats almost all their meals from a dining service. And this might be something that we could rethink, because institutional food dining services have improved so much. Their food is so much shorter amount of preparation, so less loss of nutrients. It's so much fresher. You have so many more options for salads and sort of sides that are not all French fries and baked beans. I have no fight with French fries or baked beans, right, but that's not what I call side dish all the time. So there are lots of things that you can get, but if you are eating all your food pretty much cooked outside of your home, there might be loss of nutrients in the handling. As far as that vitamin C question, the evidence says that the dosage of about 2,000 milligrams a day, if taken when there's an onset or the sensation of the onset of a cold, may improve outcome, shorten the duration, reduce the severity of symptoms in about half the people who take it. Not taking it every day all the time, but in the ones who take it at the onset of the symptoms. So that means the other half aren't reporting an improvement. So I for one don't take extra vitamin C. And if one is going to, it's really, you want to look at the whole picture. Is anything that's going to interfere with a medication that you have to take on a regular basis? Is it going to interfere with any blood tests that you may have to take? But all that extra ascorbic acid in your blood can give you, for example, a false positive glucose on a urine test. So there's things that you just want to get the big picture of before you take it to be without any, all good and without any possible caution.
What's your feelings about organic foods?
I love them, and if I can get my hands on them, they're going to be a staple on my plate. But if I don't get my panties in a bunch. I still think we are improving our well-being by having, again, the colorful fruits and vegetables and the simple, low-fat, not too complicated meats, monounsaturated fat of olive oil and canola oil. Those are your body-friendly ways of eating. The condition of non-organic food goes to, in one argument, it's less nutrients than organic, and another argument is it has a burden of pesticides and herbicides, things to kill the weeds, kill the bugs, and prevent and enhance the growth, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. So the agricultural industry wants to make food that's not going to get spoiled in the field and sort of, trim their profit margin down so that you can get something to the supermarket that the consumer will want, and consumers are not so keen on things that are sort of wilted and have splotches and holes in them, even if they're and organic foods often look that way.
Right.
But I know that that's good, and I go ahead and buy it when my local community supported agriculture. I welcome those little wormholes in the cabbage. Thank you, worm. That means it's good. Right? But if you go in the supermarket, you want your food to look perfect, and that's the stuff that the handling and the growing systems are meant to try to make them come out uniform and pretty. So if you would let the industry know that doesn't rank for you, then go ahead. You might get more organic or lower herbicide and pesticide burdens. But as a last point on that, I am not concerned about the herbicide and pesticide burden on my vegetables and fruits. I know that, and I often give the people who I'm offering education to the PDF that shows the Dirty Dozen, where apples are at the top, and then the Clean 12. I can't remember what the second group is called. But I will say, yes, the apples are at the top, but that shouldn't stop you from eating apples. Get organic whenever you can, but an apple is going to help your body in so many ways that avoiding the apple because of its unfortunate position at the top of that list. Your body wants the apple. Get it. Eat it.
So that is a very interesting point, that these kinds of things are very good for your health. But what are other myths, and why do, for example, the Japanese or the Chinese or any other group out of Asia, why is it that they seem to live longer, or do they?
Excellent question. And I'm not sure I have a solid answer for you. There might be, I recall like 20, 30 years ago when yogurt was the yogurt industry, notably Dannon, was trying to make Americans want to eat yogurt, and they used this, a little old guy eating yogurt, and he says, and that's what his mom, who's 104, tells him to do, and there's this much older little old lady tapping him on the head. Remember that commercial?
I sure do.
Well, it turns out that maybe those populations are eating more fermented foods in general, and the diversity of microorganisms in our gut is having an effect on many aspects of our health, very protective effect. And so that might be one of the less appreciated roles of some cultures' food patterns that is supporting longevity. And I know that Albert Einstein College of Medicine was studying longevity, older people like in 99, 100, 101 who were still spry and could tell a joke better than either of us. And they had very high levels of high-density lipoprotein, the HDL, which is thought to be an antioxidant in the body. It's the little dust buster scooping up the potentially misplaced cholesterol molecules, lots of things. And if we tried to look at where the research showed how do you get your HDL to go up, one of the things is to keep your body weight down. So high levels of body fat is associated with lower levels of HDL. So also physical activity is associated with a higher level of HDL. Although I think there's a good handful of studies that said if I start from sedentary and I become a person who can run 3 miles 3 days a week, the HDL didn't go like double. It sort of went up a little. So somewhere in there is a genetic kind of governor on that. But who knows if the microorganism diversity is also supporting one of those. So I think what I'm saying is there are markers of the survivors well into their later decades that people are studying to see if they have been interfered with in other populations. So, and then there's the whole thing about not just your genes, but the telomeres that sit on top.
You have to explain that to our audience.
Okay, well, I would actually offer, Wikipedia has a fabulous little telomere. I should give you a better spelling on it while I'm at it, huh? So there's little things that sit on top of our genes, and I think it's TELO. They seem to be damaged and shortened with our life exposure to stress, to environmental stress, to medical stress, physical stress. So you might start off with good ones, but you could damage them. And maybe in those populations, there are Telomere. Their telomeres are not damaged. Telomere.
Interesting.
And it affects how our cells age. And they're called, the telomeres are at the caps at the end of each strand of DNA, and they protect our chromosomes. There's a lot of unknown and a lot of attempts to study in order to know that. But I will kind of slide into another place and say, when I've done nutrition education on home visits, where it's an economically impoverished home, person with multiple chronic diseases, diabetes, high blood pressure, many times obesity, often asthma, just, things nobody wants. And the person might be HIV positive, might not be. So I'm not trying to sort of point to any one, these were the bad choices you made and here's what happened to you. But sometimes there are things that really are an effect of the wealth maldistribution in this country, how someone was almost doomed to not be able to get a better education, to not be able to make a better income, to not be able to afford a home in a neighborhood. There's evidence that noise level affects blood pressure.
Really?
And so I sometimes just want to say, I know that I'm chatting with somebody. I know if you could have a private chef, if you could bring in, who was Oprah's chef? She wrote a book.
Yeah,
if you could bring her into your kitchen and cook your meals, and I could take you home with me and just give you a quiet bed to sleep in and take your worries away for a month, you're going to be a healthier person. But these circumstances are just really that social medicine aspect that are very hard to change. And sometimes I think when the medical field looks at nutrition education and says it doesn't work, well, of course, I start definitely opposing that attitude, but it's because nutrition education is one of the pieces of a bigger picture that is not going to work on its own. It's not a solo thing. It really needs to be also, the communities that are trying to bring more supermarkets in, more green carts, to provide better sidewalks so people can take walks. There's a fabulous initiative in New York called Project Climb.
Oh,
and it's CLIMB. Are we running out of time?
We are. No, go ahead.
Okay. Project Climb is a project that started in the Mailman School of Public Health at Columbia, where looking at the parks of New York City is from 110th Street, which is kind of the beginning of Upper Manhattan, all the way to the tip of Manhattan. The parks existed, separated by streets with intersections and lots of traffic, but some of the parks were inaccessible, or they were thought to be dangerous. If there were basketball courts, they weren't in good condition, and there might have been a place for selling drugs. So the Project Climb, and CLIMB is an acronym which actually is hard to make sense of. It's City Life is Moving Bodies.
How interesting is that?
Yes. And they mapped all of the parks, and if you looked at it on a slight angle, it looked like the neck of a giraffe. So they've made up something called the Giraffe Path. And the Parks Department, and also with some philanthropic funding, over about an 8-year period, improved the quality of the parks, built-in steps, cement steps that had been crumbling, took away the glass, changed the nature so that it wasn't so much for hustling, and people are using the parks. And there's an annual event called Hike the Heights, in which groups will start from each park and wind up in Upper Manhattan near what is recently reopened as the High Bridge, which was a bridge that Edgar Allan Poe was known to walk across and look out upon when he lived in the Bronx. So there's so many things. Nutrition education is one of in a constellation or center. The person is at the center, and there are these different spokes that go out. So having opportunity to do walk, getting around green space, There's a fabulous study that showed a person recovering from anything, whether it was surgery, a cold, whatever, recovered faster the closer they were to a green space.
Yes. Well, we have to finish the show right now. We have very little time, but I am so pleased that you have come on the show, Maudene. One last question for you. This show is currently called the Susan Brender Show, but it started out as V for Vitality, and vitality is a very important aspect of eating. Don't you agree that if you eat well and you get good education and you exercise, that all of that will create vitality in your life?
Absolutely. There's no other answer.
There you go. Well, we've been talking to Maudene Nelson, who is a nutritionist in New York City, and she has so much information to give us that we have to say to her, please come back. I want to thank you, Maudene, for being on the Susan Brender Show. You have been an inspiration to everybody, and if I give you the last word, what would you like to say to our audience?
Oh, wow, good one. It's all about food. What it takes to eat well will also influence your ability to budget for other life events. It affects how much rest you get. And please be sure to include every day those colorful vegetables and fruits, and give yourself the gift of a quiet and peaceful meal at least once a day.
Thank you, Maudene Nelson, for being on my show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to The Susan Brender Show.